name is Terrance Frelix Sr.
Go ahead.
Basically, from my testimony, the whole deal was, it was kind of difficult because after being let go after 4 hours of interrogation, basically I thought wasn't nothing going on. You know, I went back to the restaurant thinking I'm getting my vehicle. Actually, I had to catch a cab back, and my business partner actually had cash on them to pay for it because they took the only cash I had on me. When I got back there, my vehicle was gone. His vehicle was there, and it was trashed. But I end up, you know, I got a ride home, and the next following day, I didn't know where to turn to, so I knew about legal rights. So I went to legal rights and contacted them and told them the incident and what happened, and it wasn't nothing in their standings that they could do anything about, so they referred me into a private lawyer. At the time, I didn't really have no money, so I looked into colleagues and people that I live with and family members and kind of helped put up the money to afford the lawyer. So in the process, we submitted I hired a lawyer. Basically, my whole thing was, where's my vehicle, my keys, all my property management company equipment was in that vehicle, my jacket, clothes and stuff. So I hired a lawyer because wouldn't nobody tell me exactly where this vehicle was, how to go about getting it. So when I obtained a lawyer, she even had trouble. They wouldn't tell her where it was or anything of that. I said the process went on for like 2 years. To this day, I haven't still received anything. I went to court, and I was able to hire the lawyer and fight against the forfeiture, and the means of court kind of lost it based on certain allegations that was put to the table, true or false from my understanding, but besides the point, went through it, and 3 months later, I get a letter from my lawyer saying that, well, the judge went against you because you didn't testify. Based on our coming in, it was just testifying on an illegal search and seizure, so she felt like she didn't have to actually put me on the stand for it, because as long as I had representative there to show where the money was and where it came from, that was all that you guys was worried about. So had those people in place, did it, and still lost it. At the same time, was finding out, well, this is still unfair. How can I go about fighting that judgment? Well, they told me I can file an amendment to that forfeiture. Well, at the time, my lawyer tells me that she doesn't handle that case. So it kind of like put me back to square one and like, well, who do I turn? So I went to a lot of different agencies, and like I heard a lot of lawyers, they wanted like $10,000. I don't have that kind of money. I'm a single father, 3 kids, trying to raise them on my own. And basically it was like a nail in the foot. So I went about and asked her, was there any kind of way I can do it myself? Unfortunately, I took the initiative on myself that, well, since I couldn't get any help, I'm gonna do the best I can from the knowledge I have from growing up and in school and stuff like that to pursue it the best way possible. Well, in the process of that, I went, filled out the necessary papers by me not having any income. I filed waivers. The same judge that signed off on this conviction to give my property away signed off saying that, okay, you got a verifiable right of trying to get your property back. So he signed off on my basically appeal. So he reevaluated the evidence to okay my appeal to go through him. And in the process, I ended up having to move because of my financial situation behind all this. And in the process of me moving, the paperwork got sent to my old residence, and I never got, so it kind of left me at a limbo of not being able to get anything. So I basically lost my forfeiture case based on a piece of paper that I never got, and when I did find out about it, it was too late to give it in. And to this day, I'm still stuck with basically my whole management company that I started with a partner of mine, down to nothing. Me and my kids back struggling, trying to make ends meet from nothing, you know, and that's basically it.
Questions? Senator Moore.
Mr. Frelix, thank you for making the time to be here.
You
know, my kids come home from the bus about 4:22, and I had to make arrangements for someone to pick them up, so I appreciate that. We need to get you out of here. Did you get a piece of paper that looked like this when your property was seized?
Mr. Frelix.
To be honest, no, I didn't. At the time of releasal, they just released us. You know, me, my business partner, my little brother, and they just released us out, you know, and they didn't tell me nothing or anything. I'm thinking that when I left, my car would be there and there's nothing going on. So to answer your question, no, I didn't. I actually had to obtain that lawyer who found out that that paper was sitting waiting on me. And it was like, well, how do I go about getting it? Because my only concern was my keys to my house, you know. I couldn't even get in home because you guys, they took my vehicle plus the keys and the keys to my house. So I wasn't even able to get in the home. So I had to hire this lawyer within a couple weeks later to find out, well, where to go find this pink piece of paper to actually sign and say, well, basically the deal was if I didn't sign this paper, I couldn't get my keys. Well, I needed my keys to get in my house, so my lawyer said, okay, sign the paper. We got 60 days, and we'll deal with it that way. And that's basically how I got the paper.
Senator Moore? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, Senator Latz.
Thank you. Madam Chair, sir, thank you for being here. This is kind of what I was talking about when we got committees sitting in sanitized hearing rooms and prosecutors sitting in sanitized offices, and what's really happening on the street. And I wish Representative Cornish had been around for the last hour and a half to hear the testimony from non-law enforcement perspectives on this stuff, because what's happening on the street is nowhere near what happens on a flow chart.
Further questions? All right. Oh, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Frelix. I think you did a really great job of explaining a very complicated process for someone who hasn't been trained as a lawyer, but I think just for those of us who have been trained as lawyers, sitting and hearing firsthand how difficult it is to even understand what concepts, you know, that we're trying to deal with and trying to navigate your way through that is really impossible. And so I think the suggestion of flipping things around as far as making it the prosecutor's responsibility to go forward with this and have to move the ball forward rather than expecting you to do that, I thought was a very good suggestion.
Thank you very much. We want to let you get to your kids.
Right,
so thanks so much.
Thanks.
If you want to introduce your next witness, that would be great. And thank you, Lee McGrath, for being patient and letting us flip you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members, seated next to me is Adrian Ramirez, and on July 28th of 2008, his home was raided by a task force operating in Hennepin County. He doesn't know the name of the task force. If you wanted to verify, he indicates it's Officer Greg Bernstad. He's going to tell you about what happened that day, but I'm going to give you some background on what led up to that. Adrian went to visit his brother. Unfortunately, his brother was living in a house that's known for gang activity. He left his brother's house, and he was stopped by an officer who was from a task force operating in Hennepin County. He was handcuffed, he was put on the ground, he was interrogated at the scene of the stop at the roadside, told that he had information and the officer wanted to know what it was. Unfortunately for Adrian, he works as a contractor, does construction work, and that's all he knows about. He was taken to the Brooklyn Park Police Department, detained for 5 hours, interrogated. He was told that he would be deported if he didn't give information. He was told that his whole family would be deported. In the month that followed, he finally says, yeah, I'll get you information, and he got released. In the month that followed, this particular officer followed him around town, stopped him, told him he'd be deported because he hadn't given him any information yet, and eventually that led to July 28th of 2008, and I think Mr. Ramirez can tell his own story from there.
Please go ahead, state your name for the record.
My name is Adrian Ramirez. Okay, it was on July 28th, 2008. I got off of work, right? I was resting because I was really tired. And that afternoon, like about 8 o'clock, I had to go pick up my daughter from my mother-in-law's house. So I seen that gang strike person's car there, parked outside my house. and I see a lot of unmarked cars going around. So I get there and I seen the task for a person. So he comes to me and say, "Hey man, I'm gonna talk to you." So I go like nothing's gonna happen, scared but nothing, like I have a feeling nothing's gonna happen. So I get there, he throws me to the ground, handcuffs me, beats me up, take my keys away. He goes into my house. He told me before that, he told me that somebody had told him that I had guns in the house. So he goes in the house and starts searching. And my dad was in the house at that moment. So they try to. He knew I was gone. He knew I was on my way to pick up my daughter. He heard a lot of noise, people talking. So it's like they try to open the door because they have my keys. He said, "Hey, who's this?" Like when they try to open it, he pushed it back so he can close it and they say this is gang strike force. We come in to search your house, and he was asking for the search warrant. Where's your search warrant? And then they beat him up. They even broke a teeth of him. Then they didn't find nothing. And then I was in the police car that day. Then I got taken to Brooklyn Park Police, and I was telling him, why am I arrested? Why am I getting hold? He said, everything is under investigation. We found drugs on your house. So I go to Hennepin County Jail for the weekend, and then waiting for me to get charged. But I already knew about what I gonna get charged with it. So they released me the next week, and then I went back to him. I told him, "Man, where's my stuff? Why didn't you charge me with nothing if you say you found something?" And then what was it? Oh, and then I went back to call him on his phone. "Hey man, can I at least," because they took everything. We couldn't go back to the house because they changed the locks, and we went to the our manager. We told him, "Hey, you know what happened? Hey, this police officer told us to change the locks because everything's under investigation." So I called him, say, "Hey man, can I at least, if you took everything, can I at least get my daughter's stuff, her diapers at least? Because I had no money. I came from jail without no money. So that man, let me get at least my daughter's diapers. I don't got no money." He's saying, "No, I'm too bad, man. It's everything is under investigation." And then it passed a full year, and then I talked to my immigration lawyer, saying, "Hey man, you know what happened to me? You know, I haven't gone to hire a lawyer so I can get my property back." He said, my lawyer said, "I got a friend that is working with that lawsuit about gang strike force." He said, "Man, I want to talk to him so I can get my stuff back." And that's about all I gotta say.
Questions from members? Senator Moore?
So, Mr. Ramirez, was there ever a warrant to search your home produced?
No warrant. I was asking for the warrant the whole time, and my dad asked for the warrant. He told me, and then he got deported for nothing. Because immigration was with the gang strike persons that day. That's when they were raiding a lot of places.
Senator Moore?
Madam Chair, and Mr. Ramirez, so your entire house was basically sealed off, and you have never been able to get back in to get anything out of your home to this day.
Mr. Ramirez?
Till this day.
Questions from members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. And last, but not least, Mr. McGrath. Mr. Lee McGrath, thank you so much. Members, this is the last witness.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Lee McGrath. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Justice, Minnesota chapter. The Institute for Justice is one of the nation's premier public interest law firms defending property rights. My firm is best known for representing Suzette Kelo in her defense of her property against eminent domain abuse in New London, Connecticut. After the Supreme Court decision in the Kelo case in 2005, my firm was instrumental in lobbying to see changes and seeing changes made in 43 states, including Minnesota. In addition to litigating condemnation cases and lobbying for eminent domain reform, the Institute for Justice has litigated civil asset forfeiture cases, lobbied for changes to state forfeiture laws, and submitted amicus briefs including one in the forfeiture case currently before the United States Supreme Court, Alvarez v. Smith. The Institute for Justice is concerned about asset forfeiture laws because they allow for and sometimes even encourage the taking of private property. Just as in eminent domain, forfeiture laws empower the government officials to take property. But unlike condemnation, often little practical process is afforded property owners. The government can take property and have title passed to it without proving guilt of any crime. Moreover, unlike eminent domain takings, property owners face significant burdens to defend their properties, as you just heard, because of the cost and complexity of filing a lawsuit and other factors. My task today is a simple one. That is to give the committee some background information and history of forfeiture laws, and I promise to do it in all of about 4 minutes. Under laws at both the federal and state level, governments can forfeit property either criminally or civilly. Criminal forfeiture is tied to criminal conviction of an individual, where the government needs to show that an offender is guilty beyond reasonable doubt and the accused is afforded all rights under the Constitution. While criminal forfeiture can occasionally be abused, they are largely uncontroversial because the government must demonstrate in courts and juries must determine that the property owner obtained his property illegally before title of property shifts to the government. But civil forfeiture, on the other hand, is a legal creation. It's a fiction that enables law enforcement to take legal action against inanimate objects for participation in alleged criminal activity, regardless of whether the property is guilty or innocent, or even whether the property owner is charged with a crime. Civil forfeiture actions are in rem proceedings, which literally means against a thing. The property itself is charged, and that is why civil forfeiture proceedings have bizarre titles, such as United States versus $10,500 in U.S. currency, or State of New Jersey versus one 1990 Ford Thunderbird. And because they are civil proceeding, most constitutional protections afforded criminal defendants do not apply to property owners in civil forfeiture cases. And here is the history. The doctrine of in rem forfeiture arose from medieval ideas rooted in the ancient law of Deodan. Kings, for instance, could seize an instrument that caused the death of a person in order to finance the deceased funeral mass. The idea arose from a superstition that objects acted independently to cause death. American forfeiture laws arose from the British Navigation Acts of the mid-17th century. The acts were passed during England's vast expansion as a maritime power. The acts required imports and exports from England to be carried on British ships. If the acts were violated, the ships or their cargo on board could be seized and forfeited to the Crown, regardless of the guilt or innocence of the owner. The key point here is that the Crown often couldn't, and the English police could not get their hands on the suspect. So instead, in lieu of apprehending the suspect, they took the cargo and the ship. Using the British statutes as a model, the U.S. Congress, the first U.S. Congress, at the end of the 1700s, passed forfeiture statutes to aid in the collection of customs and duties, which provided 80 to 90% of finances for the federal government during this time. Civil forfeiture was introduced in American law through these early customs statutes. The forfeiture power was upheld in early Supreme Court cases. The most important aspects of these early forfeiture cases, however, is the very limited justification for the application of civil forfeiture to innocent property owners. The Supreme Court held that the civil forfeiture was closely tied to the practical necessities of enforcing admiralty, piracy, and customs law. In other words, in rem forfeitures permitted the court to obtain jurisdiction over property when it was virtually impossible to seek justice against property owners because they could not be found. Therefore, with civil forfeiture, the government could ensure that customs and other laws were enforced, even if the owner of the ship or the cargo was outside the court's jurisdiction. The United States Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story wrote that the vessel which commits the aggression is treated as the offender, as the guilty instrument or thing to which forfeiture attaches, without any reference whatsoever to the character or the conduct of the owner. However, Story justified such forfeitures, and I quote, from the necessity of the case as the only adequate means of suppressing the offense or the wrong. In other words, forfeiture laws were justified because law enforcement could not apprehend a suspect, but it could gain control over the property. Madam Chair, members of the committee, private property is one of the nation's most cherished principles, but it is a principle that is under assault. The changes to civil forfeiture that gave law enforcement agencies a percentage of forfeiture proceeds have created a powerful incentive to seize, to forfeit, and to profit. As dramatically seen in the Metro Gang strike force, these pecuniary interests have distorted law enforcement's priorities, altered officers' and prosecutors' behaviors, and most disturbingly, led to a number of abuses. By acknowledging the due process requirements limiting the power of law enforcement to act unilaterally, this committee will be taking the first step to curb those abuses and protect one of Minnesotans' most fundamental rights. Thank you.
Questions from members? Senator Latz.
Madam Chair, I know the hour is late, and it's demonstrated by the fact that most of the committee members have had to leave for other obligations by this point. I think what Mr. McGrath stated and that what the two previous witnesses stated would be most beneficial for the full committee membership to hear. And I would ask that next time we can reconvene as a group, that perhaps the tape, if we have the video, be broadcast at the very beginning of the hearing so that all of the committee members can have the benefit of this information. I would also ask that as we consider moving forward, one thing I did not get a chance to ask Mr. Plunkett or Mr. Bass was what their thoughts were on the scope of the innocent owner issues within the statute, in all of the forfeiture statutes. And I'd hope that we would also include the DWI statutes in there because it's particularly broad definition of household member when you talk about the owner of a vehicle that may be driven by someone else that ends up being forfeited. But there are issues of privity, there are issues of innocent ownership and connection to the conduct and so on that I hope we can take a look at and ask for some input on.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I would just like to echo some of what Senator Latz is saying. I think it's particularly important for all of the members of the committee to get a balanced view. And when some of our members can sit here and say that there is only one side because they're not hearing all the sides of the issue, I think that's a problem. And so I would ask that if we do something similar in the future, that we, at the very least, intersperse the various sides here so that I think would be beneficial even for the law enforcement officers who were here to have heard that there is another side and another kind of concern in this. And that would be beneficial for everybody to hear everybody else. So I would ask that we pay some attention to how we sequence the witnesses so that in the future they can kind of have to hear each other if they want to give their own testimony.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, my testimony is in each representative and each senator's packet. Moreover, I am at my office in Minneapolis, and I'm happy to come back and redo my testimony if the chair would like it.
All right, thank you. Further questions? Seeing none with that, this meeting is adjourned.